There is yet another story that is floating around the world that is being hidden from North Americans because if it came out, there would be a lot of people with egg on their face. There would be a lot of people who would be looking back at history and going, oh my God, we were on the wrong side. Now, of course, topics that are this controversial, we can't really get into in detail here on YouTube because of the censorship. They would take my channel down if I told the truth like I did over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. How many of you know who these two women are? I'm sure a lot of you will probably be able to recognize the woman on the right immediately, but perhaps maybe not the woman on the left. We talk about this over there and the story that is being kept from you and how it would affect your daily life immediately if it were known. Nobody studies history anymore. Nobody studies what happened in the past, even 100, 150, or even, ready for this, 40 years ago. People forget things. It's not on the internet, and it's not been on the internet in the last 2 weeks. Nobody cares. Well, over the Patreon channel, we hop in the Wayback Machine for $1 per month. You can find out what's really going on and who's fighting back and who tried to fight back a long time ago. It's $1 per month at the Patreon channel. That's the lowest available, allowable level that I can charge. I can't charge any less, or I would. It's even less than that, however. If you sign up for an entire year, you get a 10% discount. 3 quarters, a dime, and a nickel. That's it. A month. That's all it is. We can partner with Vimeo, keep things away from Google's censoring eyes, and we can reveal the truth. The truth that the rest of the world can see. Google doesn't have nearly as much influence overseas as they do here. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this guy, Mel Gibson. Recently, there's been a movie come out where there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. Sound of Freedom. This idea of trafficking. Giant air quotes. Another word I can't use in conjunction with trafficking here on YouTube. But it's an interesting thing to observe that probably the most popular, or maybe second most popular character associated with this actor wouldn't have any idea what you were talking about or what you were so upset about. This whole idea of fill in the blank, trafficking. You'd say, Florida Maquis, are you kidding? That character had many kids. He would, of course. People don't remember what was going on. They don't remember what was going on during the founding of this country. Of course, this is all based on some type of a true story. God's children are not for sale. Really? God's children were for sale in this country for hundreds of years. It was called indentured servitude. And newsflash, most of them were Irish. That's right. See, not all Irish people have red hair. And these two individuals were associated with a particular group that got sick of it and decided to push back. Men mostly worked outside fields and farms. Women mostly indoors. It's about what you would expect. But so were kids. Now, who remembers this scene? Pardon me. Who remembers this scene from the movie The Patriot? Where one of Benjamin Martin's sons is caught running information for the revolutionaries, I should say, and he gets captured, and then this guy takes his 2 incredibly young sons and puts weapons in their hands and has them run cover fire for him. Pardon me 1 minute. Don't know what happened there. But yeah, he has 2 kids that are clearly school-age kids pick up weapons and run cover fire for him. Now, even by modern standards, this would be seen as absolutely horribly inappropriate. You see, back then they had a different definition of what a child was than we have. In fact, even around the world today, there are wildly different definitions of what, quote unquote, a child is. Here's a picture right out of a newspaper from that era. Certain kinds of slaves were incredibly expensive, 50 sterling. However, Irish slaves were cheap, no more than 5 sterling, and most often were kidnapped and forcibly removed, worked to death, whipped, branded, without it being a crime. And sometimes they died, and that did cost some money, but it was much cheaper to get rid of one of these types of slaves than other types of slaves. Now, I know this seems like a big jump, but this is what this has to do with. See, there's a reason there is a certain adjacency that is inconvenient for a certain group. A lot of people saying, Sound of Freedom is QAnon adjacent. Oh, really? So LGB is adjacent to TQIAA++. So a lot of people say, Florida Monkey, you shouldn't beat up the LGBT community. There's not all of them. There's some of them that are our allies. None of them are our allies. None of them. Just like Donald Trump is Disney adjacent and Hillary adjacent, calling the Clintons good people and asking people to stand up for standing ovations for them. The LGB is adjacent to the TQIAA. They are exactly the same group of people, just in a different era, because they don't understand this chart. Many people, it took me forever to find this. You see, a lot of folks are very familiar with the guy in GameStop who loses his stuff over being misgendered, and then, of course, the threat to the safety of this particular individual because he misgendered this guy. But they don't remember, back in the late 70s and early 80s, the indignance over that. Why? Because there weren't cameras in everybody's hands back then. There wasn't the internet back then, so it took forever to find this. You see, it was a high-risk group that was spreading an incredibly deadly, almost completely deadly disease. And nobody wanted to talk about it. And this is about as far as I can really go on this, to be truthful. But if you understand this chart, you understand the concept of eromania. And even though the Bible only talks about agape, eros, philia, and storge, when you add in psychology, you get 4 more. And this is the problem. There's a certain group of people that are identifying, pay attention, identifying by an absence of or presence of a certain thing. And that's all they look at in their lives. They're obsessed with it. Mania. With a certain type of love. Eros. So they're eromaniacs. But mark my words. Mark my words, the founders of this country had absolutely no problem buying and selling God's children. And I just find it hilarious that the guy that was responsible for the movie played a character that was supposed to be some hero of the revolution. This hero of the revolution at that time would have had absolutely no problem having Irish slaves. In fact, indentured servitude was more common than it was not. People sold themselves into indentured servitude and their kids for hundreds of years in order to pay for the passage from Europe to the New World. And yes, they were abused horribly. You know how long that they were kept in that level of servitude was entirely up to the person that paid for it. So if you think the rich are in charge now, I mean, compared to then, they saw this as a huge blessing for the New World because it brought people and it populated colonies, and they allowed servants some level of leeway. But it was incredibly common to sell and I say this in historical terms, what they called children and what we call children are two different things. We call a 15-year-old a child, and that they would laugh at us. They would say that's not 15-year-old's not a child. That's a young person, young adult, but that's not a child. They had an entirely different definition of it. So that's why I find the movie so to my mind, a little bit disingenuous. But if you want the full story, if you want the complete layout of all this, join us over at Patreon. God bless all of you who have. It's only $1. Makes a huge, huge difference. By the way, brand new Patriot Nurse video out today. And there's something in the video that maybe it's just me. I don't want to out it publicly here, but tell me if you notice something a little bit different about that video. I'm sure a lot of you can find it. Patriot Nurse, not too hard to find. Brand new video. And message me over at the Patreon channel. Over there, one of the neat benefits, unlike YouTube, is that you have a direct line to me. There's an inbox, a private mail function over there, where you can send me your own private message. And I answer those almost exclusively. So, would love to see you over there, but tell me what you think. Anyway, have a great weekend. God bless. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.